because they live on the, because they are on the harbour, they have a right to moor a boat there. So where that piece of wood is, which is probably a piece of old packing from off the harbour wall, they allow to moor a boat there because the water will come up here. So they can moor a boat there. Talking about mooring and saying a boat, when they dug out the bottom of Sammy Hicks' cottage, they came across a medieval mooring post because the harbour is the other side of the building. I'll explain that in a minute, how it works out. But this is all, well, this bit is all backfill, and they decided to do the marina, and they put in this slipway and the rock armouring. So just go out and I'll talk about HMS Fox. Right. I'm not boring you, am I? You sure? Right. When the mineral yard closed, there weren't a lot of work here. But what they did, they took on board bashing and smashing and breaking down ships. Because as the sailing ships kind of decline, you've got to find somewhere to get rid of them. And Watchet was one of the places. And when they dredged out the harbour here to do the marina, it's surprising what they found. They found a keel of a boat, which is lashed to the end of the boat museum. They'll put that one up. That was a bit tricky, that was. When they were bashing her and breaking her down, as I say, the tide would come in and go out and go in and come out. They'd been working on the boat, and they come the next day and they were about just to step into the boat. My friend Gerald Langdon, who I used to work with, his father was on the gangs to break the boat up. And they said, don't go on the boat. And they said, why? He said, look, all the rats were running out through the mooring ropes and the chains to get off. As the tide came in, the boat was sinking. They didn't think it was going to sink, but it sunk. And the first to know were the rats. So the rats will always leave the sinking ship first. So, hey, there's truth in the old sayings. Broke her up, but, you know, we're into recycling, aren't we? They even were in those days. And I know of 3 establishments that have the portholes in their buildings and their houses in Watchet from HMS Fox. One is Morris Chidgey, the other one is Mrs. Ben Norman, and there's another place where I can't think off the top of my cocoa that have some of the portholes from HMS Fox. And also with the officers' quarters on HMS Fox, she was the flagship for the Indian Ocean Fleet. They took the wood out for the officers' quarters and used it to build in different buildings in and around the town. One of them being Bridge House. And their front room and parts of their houses are made from the timbers of HMS Fox. The biggest ship ever to come in here was a German bark. And she was 3,400 ton, but she was quite bulky, really, because she had no armour plating. And she just squeezed through, and there probably was, I don't know, 600-700 people here to see her come in, to see if she'll get stuck. And she had about, I'd say, 6 foot either side coming in. And she turned right round on a sixpence because she had side screws. And it was an amazing thing to see. But that was the biggest ship.
When was that?
Well, I've been here since 1979, so it would have been about 83, I think. Somewhere about there. But then about 2 or 3 years later, the docks closed. I remember the docks working. I knew a lot of the dockers because they used to go down in the Anchor and drink. There's my pub vault coming out again. But that was the dockers' pub, the Anchor. But yes, at one time, Watchet Harbour was the 2nd biggest tidal harbour in the whole of Great Britain. The only other harbour being bigger than Watchet, tidal harbour, was Dover. Yes, it's been a port for 1,000 years. This has been a port longer than what Bristol has.
So more important than Bridgewater? Because I thought Bridgewater was like miles more important than Bristol before Bristol.
No, Watchet. Well, we had the iron ore here. See, look, we're just coming up. We had the iron ore. There's the last of the tracks that run up underneath the Brennan. The iron ore came here about 1850, and we used to send it over to Wales. Gonna have to put your bell down. It's going to be heavy. We sent it over to Wales. And they used to smelt it, and then they discovered iron ore in Canada, didn't they? And they used to just scoop it off the ground, and they could bring it over in the bulk carriers more than we can dig it out of the ground and send it down here. There's still iron ore up there, but it's just not commercially viable to dig it out. And then just turn of the 1900s, that was a kind of death knell, really. But yeah, it gave employment to the town. But yes, hence, you know, the Royal Oak at Luxborough, you know its nickname colloquially, it's called the Blazing Stump. And you'll say why? Because the miners up under the hills there, it was the nearest place to get wallop. And they'd go down, of course, miners being miners, they'd fight. And they used to say, "Cool, do you hear about the blaze at the stump the other night?" And it was called, and that's the reason why it's called the Blazing Stump.
Do they still refer to it as that?
Yeah, local still. There was a folk group called the Blazing Stump Folk Group. Yeah, run by George Oddy. But anyway, that is no more. But there we are. But here we are. Good prawning. It's taken a few years to come back from when they were doing the war for the marina. The prawns weren't so good here. They really stirred up too much sediment and the prawns didn't come in, but things are improving. But they didn't quite get it right, I've got to say it. We've got to sort out this mud problem. They should have put in a sump where you could agitate the water and suck it out and take it out. Or what they should have done is carried on and used the fresh water to keep the level up inside the harbour. And then, because you're only really refilling with fresh water, you wouldn't get so much silt in it. But that costs money, doesn't it? Because the river used to, where those boulders are, the river used to run through there, out through, and you had a thing running through the middle of the harbour called the gut. And if you wanted to go and sluice out around the ships were, you put the planks in and send the water around and it was help sluice it. But we don't do that now.
Simple.
But I've actually someone was telling me down in Cornwall, they had the same similar thing there as we've got here, and they've actually resurrected putting water through the harbour again. So when the tide comes in, even if you're just looking for 2 or 3 metres above the flooding gate, because you've got fresh water going in, you haven't got so much silt and salt water going in. So it helps keep itself clean because it has no chance to silt up so much. But hey, what do I know?
Tell them about the mud sports. That was a real good weekend.
Oh God, yeah. If you go into the museum, you'll see a picture of me when I had a black beard, and black hair, and a top hat. I got a tripod on one day. And I used to be the MC. I was the last MC of the mud sports. And I'd stand on the Tom Head's balcony, which is the last house at the end of Market Street, and we'd have a tug of war over the gut. Funny, the rope broke. There's a fantastic picture in the van called Brian Stone, and he's a bit like that one Fran Cotton. All you see is just his eyes, and he's just plastered from top to toe.
You mean you've had people?
People would go down the slipway there, and they do a tug of war, and over this part of the town, this time, it didn't get so muddy, and it was able to play football, and they used to play football here, and it was called the Watchet Mud Sports.
And invariably everyone ended up in the mud?
Well, they were caked. Yes, it was good. It was good. It was funny. It was hilarious. But
so did it stop because it got too muddy?
It got stopped because the marina was built, and also health and safety. See, the things you really don't know what is in there. When they dismantled these boats, a hell of a lot went in down there, and they found quite a lot when they dug it out. Dangerous metal and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we all know what we put in the Bristol Channel, don't we? Even though we've got a sewage work up by the mill there, but we'll leave it at that.